The Sharks have a 9% chance of making the playoffs. 9%? You're saying there's a chance?
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, caretaker at the Reef, also the co-host of Locked On NHL. I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen, proudly part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. And if you want to be an everydayer, all you have to do, just follow along wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. And today we're going to be discussing the Sharks roster as has been trimmed down. The Sharks have sent some players back to juniors, some players to the Barracuda. So we'll get caught up on that, where the Sharks roster kind of sits right now. Plus, we have two. We're starting to get the season previews out now from big time publications. So we're going to be looking at the Athletics Sharks preview and what they think of the San Jose Sharks this season. Then we'll see the Daily Faceoff and our good friend Stephen Ellis look at his season preview of the San Jose Sharks and what he thinks San Jose is going to do this year. So before though we get to all that, do want to take a moment and just thoughts to Mike Greer, who unfortunately his father passed away. I guess it was over the weekend, or they announced it Monday morning. Just, thinking about him and what he's going through and his family and stuff. And can only imagine, losing a parent, especially a parent like him, and he's talked about like how big of a role his dad had, both Mike and Chris Greer, and kind of where they are at in their professional careers, and a guy who was worked in the Patriots organization and kind of helped to groom both of his sons to eventually become professional, become general managers of sports teams. And just again want to just thinking about Mike. I know I'm 100% guarantee Mike is not listening to this podcast, but the poor Sharks intern that has to listen to this podcast and pass off dumb notes that I make to Mike Greer, just send that along. Hope just thinking about him. So we will awkwardly now transition to transactions as the Sharks made some cuts. So we'll go through kind of lists, and we'll talk about kind of where these guys are going to be this season and kind of the expectations, all that fun stuff for these guys. So the Sharks, again, they made 7 cuts. So the forwards, they sent Max Heiss and Teddy Merchant. Both these guys are from the 2025 draft. Sent them back to their respective junior teams. Defensemen Jack Barr, John Gormley, and Artem Guryev. Jack Barr, who is on a PTO, so he is actually now both. All 3 of these players are now with the Barracuda. Barr still on a tryout basis here as he's trying to make the San Jose Barracuda. But and then goaltenders Joshua Ravensbergen and Christian Kirsch. So of course Ravensbergen, the first round pick from this year, Kirsch was picked in the 2024 draft. Both those guys will be going back to juniors. So the Sharks are now at 56 players total. Heiss is going to be going to Prince Albert. He's going to be spending a year at Prince Albert and then in the WHL, and then he's going to NCAA. I believe it's Michigan State. I'm pulling it up right now, but I'm fairly certain he's heading to Michigan State. So Heiss is, kind of an overager guy. He should hopefully, yes, it is Michigan State. So hopefully for him, right, he can kind of step in the WHL with Prince Albert. Of course, like Ozzy Weisblatt played for Prince Albert back in the day. So hopefully he can kind of step in and earn a big role with them. And as their season has already gotten underway here in the WHL, hopefully he can kind of step in and kind of hit the ground running for them. Teddy Merchant, he is going, another guy who's kind of going the same route here. He's going to the Q. to play at the Moncton Wildcats this year. And then he'll be off to Boston College next year to play in the NCAA. So, both these players I think have a chance to really kind of light the lamp and put up a bunch of points here in their respective junior leagues. So, like I said, with all the defensemen, Barr, Gormley, and Guryev, all these guys are going to be competing for spots in the Barracuda. If not, they could be spending some time if, a guy like Jack Barr, who does want to potentially sign an AHL deal, could be spending some time in the ECHL. We know Guryev spent all of last year in the ECHL. And Gormley, I think, got a little bit of run and he got a little bit of taste last year with the Barracuda, but could be one of those guys who maybe spends a little bit of time in the ECHL. And then as call-ups happen for the Barracuda to the Sharks, he could be a guy who potentially gets called up. Look at a guy like Braden Hache last year, right? Kind of started in the ECHL and then worked his way and had a really, positive second half with the Sharks or with the Barracuda. Sorry, excuse me. Ravensbergen and Kirsch. So Kirsch is, again, another one of those players who's using that OHL or using that CHL before heading off to college. So Christian Kirsch is going to be playing with the Kitchener Rangers in the OHL this year. And I think he's going to have a chance to play some meaningful games with them as well. He is, didn't have a great year in the USHL and kind of played in the NAHL, which is kind of the league below the USHL last year. But, I think for him kind of hopefully getting some run here in the OHL where beyond it, what should be a pretty good Kitchener, like Kitchener's always a kind of a good team. So hopefully he can kind of get some run and kind of regain his confidence before heading to University of Massachusetts in 26-27. And then Ravensbergen will be heading back to Prince George, where he's going to be like the number one goaltender for them. Of course, like we know how important he is for them. So I'm a little surprised he got sent home early, like this early. Maybe Prince George is also like, we want our dude back. But I thought maybe he might get a taste of some preseason NHL games here. But I guess the Sharks feel pretty comfortable with the 5 goalies that they still have on the roster right now. So, of course, they have Askarov, they have Nedeljkovic, they have Jacob Skarek, Gabriel Carrier, and then Matt Davis, who is on an AHL only deal right now. So that's kind of where they're at with that, at least among the goalies. So Sharks still have 34 forwards on the roster and 17 defensemen and 5 goalies. So they have to get down to 23 eventually, and we'll see it kind of start to dwindle down here. I wouldn't be surprised if kind of after this upcoming weekend where the Sharks have a game on Friday, then a game on Monday, if we start to kind of see some big time cuts as they start to fill out this Barracuda roster, and we start to see a lot of those guys kind of get down and the Sharks roster kind of gets a little bit leaner here as you start to kind of get guys who are in real consideration for being on the roster on the Sharks, this season. Plus, you do have a couple of kind of junior guys still on the roster. Like a guy like Carson Wetch, who's gonna, going back to the WHL. And then, Hao Shi Wong is also going to be a guy going back to the OHL here. So you do have a couple of these junior guys who are still hanging around right now. Probably want to give them a little bit more seasoning before heading back. Especially I think a guy like Wetch, who's the Sharks are, they're going to have to make a decision on if they want to sign him next summer, which I assume they're going to want to sign him, but, kind of give him a little bit more time here, kind of give him what they want to see him continue to work on as he heads back to the WHL. And the same thing with Hao Shi Wong, where they probably want to, give him a little bit more instruction. We know this is a guy that's going to take some more time to develop. So having him in-house a little bit longer makes a ton of sense. And then that way when he goes back to the OHL, he'll be, kind of given a little bit more homework to kind of work on here. So, but yeah, we're going to start to continue to see some of these cuts and stuff as the Sharks, again, just little cuts here. But like I said, I think we'll probably start to kind of see a big transition of guys getting to the Barracuda roster here sooner rather than later. Especially, like I said, I think after this weekend, when you start to kind of get a couple games here, that way the Barracuda guys can start prepping for their season, especially all those AHL guys, like kind of start getting, like those guys who are on AHL deals, your Van Roe boys, your Anthony Vincents, guys like that, and then start kind of gearing up for the Barracuda season. So we're going to look at the Athletic preview, which shockingly gives the Sharks a 9% chance to make the playoffs. So we're going to discuss their preview, what they think of San Jose this year, kind of some of their big questions around the roster. So we'll get to that in just 1 second. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. If your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. The great thing about FanDuel is it fits however you like to play. They have player props, so maybe you have, maybe you had Thornton going off for the Chiefs on Sunday night. You're probably feeling pretty good about that. If you want to build a same-game parlay, so if you think a bunch of different things are going to happen in a game, or even jumping into live action as it unfolds, if you had the Eagles to come back and win against the Rams, you probably had yourself a pretty good Monday. So it's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little bit more energy to Sundays. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, guys, before we continue, of course, want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Again, proudly part of the Locked On Network. If you haven't yet, perfect time to subscribe. Preseason actions here. We got training camp going on. We have preseason games this weekend, like plenty of stuff. Season's right around the corner, and this is going to be, I think, one of the most fun seasons we've had in San Jose probably since 2018, 2019, to be honest. So make sure you guys are following along wherever you get podcasts, and of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. All right. The Athletic. So they started doing their team previews, right? Where they think every team is going to finish. And like spoiler, they have the Sharks as one of the worst teams in the NHL. They have them currently ranked 31st, which I think it's fair. It's fair. I'm wearing teal colored glasses, but I think they're going to be a little bit higher than 31st. I have some teams I'm circling that are ahead of them, but they kind of picture the Sharks or I'll pull it up here if you watch on YouTube. If not, I will describe it. So they're projecting the Sharks to have a 73.2 point season this year. Just a reminder, the Sharks finished last year with 52 points. They actually wrote a really great thing here about how San Jose is the first team in a bajillion years to have less than 100 points in 2 seasons combined. Hopefully this year we can get over, not hit 100 points, but get over, stop this 50-point season or sub 50-point season. So they kind of where the bell curve of the Sharks and kind of where their most of their kind of points are. 17% chance that they have like 75 points, 16% chance they have like in the 60 or 70 point range, and then 14% chance that they're in like the 80-point range. And then it kind of, as a bell curve works, like there's like a 1% chance that they have like 100 points or something like that. They also 37% chance that they are the 8th team in the division, 24% chance in this as the 7th team, 17% chance as the 6th, and further. But where they kind of have them ranking in among the bottom, which I think is the more important part, right, is they give them a 15% chance to be the last place team, 53% chance that they'll be in a bottom 5, and a 79% chance that they'll be in the bottom 10, which again, I feel that's very fair for those. I don't think this is going to be the worst team in the NHL this year, as I've stated many, many times throughout the summer, but they do give them a 9% chance to make the playoffs, which I felt was extremely high for, again, a team that has not put up 100 total points over the past 2 seasons. But their kind of reasoning and justification for it is, well, there's so much potential, like, kind of growth with this roster, and especially among the young players, right? They kind of put their best case scenario for this team is like an 86 points, where Celebrini is just like a monster, becomes a superstar. Will Smith continues his growth. Askarov's the real deal. And then Misa and Dickinson just kind of hit the ground running. And if all those things happen, like, there's a realistic chance that this team could, crack that 85 point mark and kind of be in contention to make the playoffs. They also said, like, the worst case scenario is this team's like a 60 point team, which is, and just the kids don't progress. And that, I think that would be like absolute horrible case scenario, right? Is if, yes, you're in line to get the first overall pick, but all the picks that you've already drafted in Celebrini and Smith and Eklund and Askarov, who you traded for, and, Dickinson, Misa, none of these guys really kind of take that next step or take that first step for some of these guys. Like that's a really tough case scenario for San Jose, because again, it's nice to have the best prospect pool in the entire league, but if these prospects don't turn into anything, then what does it really mean, right? And I feel like Celebrini's as close to as a lock as you're going to get here at this point. But it would be really disappointing if he takes a big step back and Will Smith kind of doesn't continue his progression. And like I said, but overall though, for the Athletic, you feel like their kind of big thing is, you'll be hard pressed to find a team projected to be so bad, so interesting, and so well set for the future. That though is the majesty of the San Jose Sharks. Even if the big pieces progress, the points totals could still be ugly, and it doesn't really matter, to be honest. So, we kind of know where the weaknesses on this team are, right? It's going to be the blue line. As much as Mike Greer, kind of tried to patchwork it together with some veterans and, the Klingbergs and the Lettys and the Orlovs here to try to just add some NHL veteran presence to guys who are still relatively good players at this point. But their big thing that they kind of discuss in here is if the defense just is not able to find any sort of ground and you kind of leaving Nedeljkovic out to dry, it doesn't matter how good the forwards are, right? And the Sharks, who do have, right, so many fun forwards that we talked about, and even veterans like Wenberg and Toffoli and Skinner, who are going to be nice and important pieces to help insulate them. If the blue line is as terrible as it possibly could be, it's not going to really matter. And that maybe the Sharks just get into a bunch of 5-4 type of games, which would be really fun, especially after what we've seen from the offense over the past couple seasons, and maybe they just try to kind of outscore their problems this year. But that's a definitely a possibility. So yeah, but I think they were pretty favorable. The people working on it was Sean Gentile, Shayna Goldman, and Dom. Kind of all, so very, very analytics heavy, but I thought kind of, I'll say, very fair for the Sharks, for at least with their season preview. So our good friend Stephen Ellis, so we're going to talk about here in a little bit. Spoiler, not as nice. So we're gonna be nice to our friend Steven. But 2, we'll dig into what Steven kind of said about San Jose this season, and why maybe not expect a massive jump in points, especially kind of compared to what the Athletic has. So we'll get to that here in just 1 second. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have a full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you've been putting off organizing your finances, Monarch is there for you. They do the heavy lifting. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. It's like your own personal Puckpedia, people. And the great thing about it, too, is also if you and your partner, maybe you have separate accounts, but you have a joint goals, whether it's buying a house, buying a car, or just planning your next adventure. They make it super easy to work together, but also, again, keep your money your money. So don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNHL. All right, before we finish up, do of course want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NHL podcast. We're bringing you daily league-wide stories that matter the most with local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. All right, good friend, Stephen Ellis, who's, of course, been on the show multiple times. Love talking with him about prospects, all that fun stuff. Not as nice when it came to the Sharks preview this year. So he, though, I think was a little bit more conservative with the lineup, where he has like Gaudette playing in the top 5 or in the top 6. He still has Smith at the winger, so he might have wrote this a little bit before kind of the Misa news, right? It doesn't have it doesn't really have Dickinson and Misa kind of really in the mix as much. And I think that's why maybe he's a little bit kind of lower than the some other people. So, but he talks about like in his thing, right, where of course the offense is just terrible because they were dead last or mostly dead last and everything. But to speak about very positive about our Swedish Prince William Eklund, and then talk to, of course, with Celebrini and Smith and how Smith is going to have a bigger impact this season. And even wrote about recently about how he thinks Smith's going to be a massive breakout candidate for San Jose this year. So don't get on Steven. He's just doing his job here. And I think now that we have the potential of Will Smith on wing with Celebrini this year, I don't feel like the breakout is like, it feels certain-ish. I don't, again, not a lock, but you feel more confident in that potential Will Smith breakout. And again, like a potential 60 to 70 point season from Will Smith. If he plays the way he did the second half of the season, like that feels really, really, not a lock, but Will Smith could be having a nice start to the nice season this year. So defense, again, he talks about, right, you go from Vlasic and Thrun to Ruda, to bringing in Leddy, Klingberg, and et cetera, et cetera. But he's like, the defense has been so bad the past couple of years where if any of these guys are like just halfway decent, it does feel like it's going to be a big jump for San Jose this year. So, but he also didn't talk about, he spends a lot of time talking about the goaltending as well with Askarov, where he expects, he kind of expects Askarov to be the guy. And he thinks Nedeljkovic can, he did play, he mentions how Nedeljkovic can play a little streaky. I think he also is on the same thing that I am, where I think the Sharks are going to be looking for a third goalie, or they should be looking for a third goalie, especially with Jacob Skarek and his, 2 NHL games that he's played, just in case if Askarov or Nedeljkovic have to miss an extended period of time. But he's very, of course, Stephen Ellis, where his bread and butter is, with the prospects. He's very high on Misa kind of sticking into the future, and mentions that he should be in a colder conversation before the season starts. Dickinson, like he's going to, we know, like Stephen Ellis is a massive Sam Dickinson fan. And he says he wouldn't bet against him staying in the NHL. And if he goes back, he's going to have a 100-point season in the OHL, if it's with London or with someone else. But, he's very high on Dickinson, and he's been very much in the Dickinson should be playing in the NHL this year. So he does, though. He does. Here's his prediction. I will read it word for word. Look, there's no reason to sugarcoat it. San Jose is doomed, and that's perfectly okay. The Sharks last made the playoffs in 2018-19. That's not going to change next spring, with Gavin McKenna being the ultimate prize, the 2026 NHL draft, with a few others to challenge. He has a link to some of the other guys there. Greer and company are solely focused on finding some incremental improvements while still finishing at the bottom of the standings. Maybe an improvement from 52 points last year to 58 would be appreciated by the fan base, but anything other than landing the top pick in the draft will feel like a failure in the 25-26 season. And that, Mr. Ellis, I disagree with you 100%. If the Sharks don't get the first pick in the draft, or at least the driver's seat, I actually would be more disappointed. Again, like I've kind of gone back. Like, I think the Sharks are the worst team in the NHL. That's a bad sign, right? Well, one, like, you can't three-peat in that. Two, I think that shows a lot of the guys that you are hoping to kind of be key pieces maybe aren't the guys that you're expecting, right? And I know, like, Askarov, if the Sharks are that bad again, it probably means that Askarov had a horrible season, right? And somebody you've invested a lot of capital into acquiring with a first round pick and then a former first round prospect in David Edstrom to get Askarov here. And that would probably mean that he falls flat on his face this year, because I think if Askarov is anywhere near league average, I think the Sharks are going to pick up a couple more wins than, the 4 points that they or 6 points that they improved by because of Ellis. So, or that Ellis has projected. I also think that means that guys like, Celebrini and Smith, again, like I kind of mentioned earlier, just don't have those big seasons. And while, yes, getting Gavin McKenna would be cool, I think the Sharks would be very happy to get the second pick. And even, looking at kind of how many defensemen are projected to, not only defensemen, but right-handed shot defensemen are projected to be in the top 10. There's about 4 of them that, kind of early on projections right now. Like, if the Sharks are in the top 10 here, they're going to have a really good opportunity to find that stud right-handed defenseman. And yes, you should always pick the best player available. But you can make a very easy argument that the best player available and your needs could very much align here. And while getting Gavin McKenna would be cool, it's throwing more for, like, you've already invested so many first, top. It would be Eklund, who's a top 7 pick, McKenna, who's the number 1 overall pick, Celebrity's the number 1 overall pick, Will Smith, who's the number 4 overall pick, and Michael Misa, who's the number 2 overall pick. Like, that would be that's 5 right there. That's a lot of investments in your forward group. So yes, I do think the Sharks and Mike Greer want to see some improvement. You want to see that your investments in these players start to pay off a little bit and start to show some growth. So I don't think if San Jose does not get the first overall pick this year, it's a failure of a season, Steven. So yeah, we'll fight next time you're on the show. So anyway, that's gonna be it for me today. We'll be back tomorrow. Make sure you're following along wherever you get podcasts, and of course you can watch on YouTube as well. Follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, as well on TikTok at Locked On Sharks. Follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at My Fry Hole. Until tomorrow, bye, friends.